Hello, Small Cotton Creations here. I am going to be showing you guys how to make a romper today. So I do have stitch counts for various sizes in a paid pattern PDF format if you want to do that. But here in this video, we will be going made to measure. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with an FDC chain. If you aren't sure what an FDC is, or a foundation double crochet, go ahead and look through my videos, and I have a video of it. But you're basically going to do a foundation double crochet chain as long as your over bust measurement minus about 5 to 10 inches for corsets. So basically at the back, you're going to have a corset to tie up the back of your romper, and you want this to be a few inches short, about 5 to 10 inches short total of that bust measurement, so that way you will end up having room for that. So make sure to account for stretch too. But what we're going to do is we're just going to continue to do that foundation and double crochet all the way across, and I will be right back. Okay, this is what it looks like so far. It's just a long foundation double crochet chain. Okay, so now I'm going to chain 2, turn, and DC back down the entire length. Okay, we're gonna do this for a few rows. Basically, we're gonna do it for the height of your boob area. So depending on how much coverage you want there, how low cut you want the top of your romper, that's what we're gonna aim for. After this first section, we're gonna start to move the back of our romper in towards our waist measurements, since the hips of our romper are going to be open. So we want to slowly decrease over time after we get through the next few rows. So right now we're going to stay with the same amount of DCs and add as many DC rows as you need to cover your boob area. Approximately 4 or 5 to 10, maybe even more than that for larger sizes. 10 rows. And then I'll come back and I'll show you what I got, and then I'll show you how to start decreasing your sides so that you can have kind of this hourglass shape to your romper. Okay, I am back. So this is what I have so far. I have 5 rows. I'm doing an extra small, so it might be a little bit small on me, but it's actually okay to go a little bit short, because you're still gonna have that coverage in the front. Since we are going to keep working our way down the piece, we're just decreasing at the sides now. So one thing is if you have a shorter torso, so like if your torso is shorter than kind of like the average person, you might find that after decreasing, once you get down to your hips, you might not be as narrow as you need to be. So to figure that out, what we're going to do is do a little bit of math. Starting off, we're going to measure around our hips and figure out what your hip measurement is, and we're going to split that in half. Okay, once you split it in half, that's kind of that measurement to eat from one hip to the other. What you're going to do is you're going to subtract about 2 or 3 inches from that, and that's going to account for the corset paneling that's going to go down the sides of your hips to tie your shorts together. If you have a really stretchy yarn, you might want to do more than that, like subtract 4 or 5 inches. But you want to take that half of your hip measurement and subtract that. That is going to be how wide we want this to be once we reach that area of our body. So we're going to keep decreasing. I'm going to show you guys how to decrease. We're going to keep decreasing as we go down our romper until we reach that measurement we just calculated, which is half of our hip measurement minus a few inches. Okay, so how we're gonna decrease is, oh, and I also wanted to mention, so if you do have a shorter torso, you might find that you're unable to reach that measurement after decreasing, and you have to keep like basically making your whole thing taller than you want to. You might want to do less rows like this in the beginning and start decreasing right away. If you have a shorter torso, that way you don't have that issue. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna chain 2. I like to add 1 DC on the outside and then do my decrease. So I'm going to do DC 2 together, and then I'm going to work my way all the way across. And on the other side, when you get to the last 3 stitches, I'm going to do a DC 2 together and then a DC. Okay, and I'm going to continue to do this every single row until I reach that measurement that we calculated. Okay, and hopefully that is around that height from the top of your boob area down to your hips. You might have to add a couple rows. So I'll get to that point and I'll show you guys what it looks like, and you can let me know in the comments if you're having any issues, but hopefully we're pretty darn close. All right, here we are. So I got down to that measurement I talked about here at my hips, just a few inches short of that. So you can see it's kind of stayed about the same width up on those first few rows, and then it slowly goes in towards the center, starting that hourglass shape. So this will tie around your back, and then this part goes over your stomach. So we're getting to a point now where we need to determine if it's too long, that maybe we're gonna have to go back a couple of rows, see if it's too wide. If it's too wide, you might have to go back quite a bit, and at the top, or take out some of the top rows, basically start decreasing faster if it's too long and too wide. If it's not long enough, go ahead and add rows until you reach your hips. So not really your waist, your hips. Not the widest part of your hips, but your hip bones actually. We're just gonna go down a couple more rows, and then we're gonna start widening out for your actual widest part of your hips measurement, for just about anywhere from, so we'll do like 2-3 more rows of the same length, and then we're gonna start widening. So what we're gonna do, and I'll show you in a minute here, but we're gonna keep widening for probably about 4 to 10 rows until you reach this area where your body bends, because that's where we're gonna have to add in our gusset chain and start the back of our shorts or our romper. Okay. Okay, so here I am. I added a couple more rows to the bottom there, so that way it is the length that I need to reach my hips. So we still need to add some more length to the whole front panel before we connect the front and the back and make the back panel, which that'll be flipped. But anyway, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start to go back out or increase the width of our panel so that it kind of fits over our hips more, and follows the shape of our body. So if you feel like you have really wide hips or really narrow hips, you can do kind of different things here. I'm going to show you what I find the easiest. So depending on how many DCs you have going across, we're going to go halfway across our piece. So I believe I have 30 stitches right now, so I'm going to go ahead and do 15 stitches. So I just did 15. I'm counting to make sure that on the other side there's 15, which there is. Okay, so if you have an odd number of stitches, then you'll have that extra stitch in the middle. Leave it in the middle. Otherwise, if you have an even number of stitches, I'm going to tell you guys what to do right now. So you're all the way across, halfway across, and you're going to add an extra stitch by doing a DC 2 together in the same stitch you just worked into and the next stitch. And then start your DC across by working into the same exact stitch you just had the second part of your DC 2 together in, and then work across. And that way you're adding a stitch to the middle and making an odd number of stitches. And that is going to be the start of the center of your shorts. Okay, so if you had an odd number of stitches, you didn't have to do that. You can go ahead and add your first increase, so add DC 2 together into the center of that odd stitch. So you'll have just one increase there. And then we're going to go ahead and work across, and that's going to be our first increase row. And we're going to want to do at least 2, maybe 3 increase rows before we have a row that's just basically straight. We're going to always have increases in the center though, so after our 3 increase rows, we will add decreases on either side. So I'll show you what we'll do next here. So that was the first increase row. We're going to go ahead and move into the second increase row. So we're going to chain 2, DC across. Hoseki, lay down. We're not going to go outside right now. Sorry, my dog just thought, because I'm talking, we're going to go do something fun. Okay, so I'm going to DC all the way to that center stitch. So if you had odd amount of stitches before, then you added increase or 2 DC into the same stitch in the center, you'll add 2 DCs or increases into each one of those stitches. So there'll be 2 increases in the center. If you were like me and you had an even amount of stitches and created that kind of DC 2 together there in the center increase, you're gonna just work 2 DCs into that increase like so, and then that'll be your first increase there. So that's the second increase row, and then we're going to go up and do it one more time. So what you'll do is work your way across, and once you get to your increases, your center increases, you're just going to add 2 more increases into the center 2 stitches. So every increased row, you're going to be increasing your stitch count by 2 stitches. And this is where we're going to want to pay attention now. We don't want our whole piece to get too long. We want to make sure that we leave room for the gusset area, which is in between our legs. So wherever your legs start to bend, that's kind of where this end of this panel should stop, and we should stop working. So we're going to do a measurement check here in a minute after this 3rd row. But right now, I'm going to get to the center increase. For me, you have 2 increases. If you had odd stitches, you're going to work just 1 DC into the first part of that increase, and then 2 DCs into the second part of the increase, 2 DCs into the first part of the next increase, and then just 1 DC into the last part of that second increase. If you're like me, you had an even amount of stitches, I'm putting 2 increases in top of either one of those DCs that had just 1, or yeah, and either top of the 2 DCs that were in that just 1 increase. Then I'm gonna work the rest of the way across. And I'm gonna check my height of my romper right now and just see how many more rows maybe I need to add before I move to the back panel. Okay, this is where we're at. Pretty close. I'm gonna add one more row and be done. So for this last row, I am going to actually increase, but to not increase it for those that will not be increasing and moving on, I'm going to show you guys that quick. You can do whatever you want really here. If you have wider hips, you can keep adding increase rows by just working those 2 increases into the center 2 stitches. But if you feel like you're getting a little too wide and this measurement is going around your hips and it's gonna end up being floppy and not be able to have a corset along your hips, you'll want to do a decrease row, or it's not a decrease row, but a row of all the stitch count stays the same. But we're going to keep the increases in the center because that makes a nice V shape at the bottom that is going to fit your legs better. So what we're going to do is do 1 DC and then do a DC2 together like you did earlier on in the pattern. Work your way to the middle, add your 2 increases, work your way across, and then add that DC2 together once you get to the last 3 stitches before you add your last DC. And that will be your not increase row. Again, you'll want to do at least 2, maybe 3 increase rows for every time you do a regular row that I just showed you or described to you. And you'll want to do that as many times as needed until you reach that crease length from here down to here. Alright, and after that, which I'm going to come back in a minute, we'll start with the back panel. Alright, I have to apologize. We're going to have to do math again. But that's okay. It won't be that complicated. As long as we remember what that measurement was for half of our hips minus a couple inches. So that measurement we worked to on the front panel. Rewind if you don't remember. That's the measurement we're talking about again. Okay? We're going to do an FDC chain just like at the beginning. Go watch the video again if you forgot how to do it. We're going to make as many FDCs as we need to across. Count though. Count as many as you need to reach half. Oh wait, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do the whole measurement. So that measurement, that's just a few inches less than your hips. We're going to work as many DCs as needed. Count though. You can always look your panel. I had to do 30, so I'm going to go for 30. So if you remember from when you did the repeat row, after you got to that center measurement when you were working down towards your hips, if you remember how many DCs you had to do, that's how many DCs you're going to do now across. And this is going to be the start of your back panel. Okay, so after you do your FDC, the length of that minus a few inches, you're gonna go ahead and repeat that row by FDCing across, or not FDCing, adding DC rows across back and forth with the same amount of stitches for at least 2, maybe 3 rows, depending on how high of a waist you want on the back of your romper shorts. So you can really do as many as you want, and we'll be able to add more stitches later. Basically, we're going to add this and we're not going to increase our width at all, and we're not going to add our increased stitches in the middle until after you add these few rows. So this is going to stay the same width. If you want to start widening the back of your shorts right now, like say if you're trying to have booty shorts and you just want them to start taking shape right away, you can skip adding more rows of DC right now and move into the next part. But I'm gonna come back in just a minute and show you guys. All right, so I got my waistband, and now we're going to start adding our increase into the center. So same exact thing that we did on the front panel, we're gonna get all the way to the center. So add as many stitches as you need to get to the center, and then we're gonna add an increase into the center. Depending on if you had to do even or odd stitches, you might have to add either a DC2 together to create an odd amount of stitches if you have even stitches, or you can just start adding increases into that center stitch right away. And we're going to do the same thing that we did on the front. We're going to work to having 2 increases in the 2 center stitches, and then every 3, maybe 4 rows, you're going to add decreases on either side of that row to prevent your back panel from also getting too wide. And you can check this by comparing your front and back panel together measurements and seeing if it's going to reach more than your hip measurements. We want this back panel to reach from the top of your booty crack, if not higher, if you want a high waist, all the way down to where your butt kind of folds over your leg when you're standing. And then we'll add in our gussets. If you want more of a booty short look, you can go as small as like 2, 3, 4 rows, and this pattern still works. You'll just need a longer gusset chain, which we'll talk about later. But right now, I'm gonna kind of add some rows here, and I'll come back and show you guys what it looks like, and yeah, we'll work from there. All right, so I have got a lot of cat hair, dog hair on me. Don't pay attention to that. But this is my back panel. Okay, so I kept working, increasing like every row, and then every 3 rows I was adding like a regular row like I discussed. So now I'm going to talk about this row right here, where we start to connect to the front panel. So basically what I did is I worked all the way halfway up. I added my 1 increase, just one of them, not 2 of them, just 1. And then I did a chain. The chain is going to be the length of your gusset, which is the length in between your legs, usually in between 10 and like 15 chains. And then you're gonna line your panels up, your front and your back panel, so that they're next to each other how you want them to be. If you have a right side, make sure the right side's out if you have one. And then you're gonna connect to the front panel by adding a DC in the center on that side, right? Because there's 2 center stitches. Make sure it's on the same side, because we're going to be working around just one leg, the inside of one leg right now. So we're going to add 2 DCs into that 1 center stitch on that one side, and then we're going to work the rest of the way across, and then we're going to chain 2 and work our way back around the leg, on the inner side of the leg, over and over again until we have the length of our inseam that we want. So anywhere between like 3 and 6, 10 rows, whatever you want. You can go all the way down your leg. You may have to add decrease stitches if your thighs are small. This might already be a little bit big for your thighs if you have really small thighs. So make sure, you know, you kind of account for that too. Okay, I am back. Excuse everything. It's really early in the morning, but I wanted to finish this video. This is what it looks like. So I did the one leg of the shorts and was going back and around for the rounds, working first into that chain in between the legs, the gusset chain, and then added like 4 rows on top of that. So from the front, it looks like this right now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull up my yarn and the corner on the other side, either on the front or the back. It doesn't really matter. I might do the back. And we're gonna work back and forth on the other side, doing the same thing that we did on this side. But I'm gonna show you how to connect so that there isn't a gap here and here. And then we'll work into the back sides of the chains in between the legs. So give me a minute here and I'll show you how I connect, but I'm gonna work towards, I'm gonna pull up my yarn in the corner and DC across to the middle, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I am now across. I did DCs across to the middle. I didn't do my second DC in the same stitch yet for the center stitch on that side. So I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna do that. I am going to start my DC like normal into that same stitch that I just worked into. And before I pull up my yarn through the 2 loops on the hook, I'm going to insert my stitch into the side of the DC, the next DC. And I'm gonna pull up a loop and then pull that loop through the 2 loops of my hook, and that is going to kind of connect my DC to the other DC on the other side of the leg panel. And then I'm going to insert my hook into the top of that same DC, that next DC, pull up a loop and pull that same loop through the last 2 loops of my hook. And again, that's going to connect everything nice and like close together, so that way there's no gap there. And then I'm going to work just single crochets across into the back of each chain for all the gusset chains. And then I'll show you how I did the other side. Connect it so that, again, yeah, otherwise if you just DC and slip stitch, it does leave a bit of a gap. So I kind of do this little thing I made up to make it connect it. So once you get across and you worked into the back of all the chains, now you are by the center of either the front or the back on the other sides, and there is the 2 DCs in the center stitch from the other leg panel. We're gonna connect to that one that's closest to the end there. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna insert our hook into the top of that DC and pull up a loop. And then we're gonna insert our hook into the side of that DC and pull up a loop. So there's 3 loops on your hook. And then we're gonna put our hook into that center DC on the other side that we're gonna be working our 2 DCs into for this new leg panel. So insert your hook, pull up a loop, so then that'll make 4 total loops on your hook. And then you're gonna yarn over and pull through 2 loops on your hook, and then yarn over and pull through 3 loops on your hook, and that will do your connect on this side. And then just make sure to work another DC into that same stitch, so you still have 2 DCs into the same stitch there. And that's what it looks like. I know it's hard to see what's going on, but basically I connected that DC really tightly to the other one, so that way there's no gap. And then you can DC across and just DC back and forth now across this other leg panel for as many rows as you did for the other side after the initial gusset chain. And that's basically it. What you're gonna do after that is add ties to your hip area on either side and to your shoulder area. Your shoulder ties I like to use to tie up the back, so that'll be your corset in your back. And then your hip ties we'll use to corset up the sides of your shorts. If you want extra support, I like to add extra set of ties at each hip. That way you can pull your yarn tight at your hip as well, kind of pulling it upwards rather than your corset just pulling everything together. But I will show that all in the very last shot. Once I finish this and have everything all done, I'll take a video of me wearing it so you can see what it looks like. So I did forget to take a video, but you can see in these shots where to tie your romper. I hope you love the pattern. Please like, share, comment, let me know how it went for you.